Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're going to reassemble the Rastar Land Rover. We have the chassis working with the hobby grade electronics now, so all we should need to do is clip all the plastic bits in and fit lots of screws. Here's the body. It's been painted in Humberol grass green, which as it turns out is matte. It did say on the top of the tin, but I completely missed it while I was at the shop. I decided to use it anyway, and I gave it a couple of thin coats of a gloss lacquer over the top. It's never going to be a mirror finish, but at least with a lacquer it's not going to show the oily fingerprints. All the doors have been painted too, with the door handles picked out in black. I've also given the seats a coat of a sand camo paint to try and brighten up the interior a bit. Hopefully they will reflect a little bit of light around the inside so it's a bit less of a black hole. We'll start by putting the windows back in to add a bit of rigidity to the body. The windscreen just drops into place over posts at the front of the body, and the main window moulding slides in towards the back and drops onto its own set of posts. Then we use 4 of the small black screws to attach it. As mentioned before, one of the plastic posts is very much stripped out, and the other ones aren't too great either. We could use a smear of epoxy or something to make sure they won't come out, but I think we're going to get away with leaving them just as they are. Next we've got all the plastic vents, and they just clip straight back in with a little bit of pressure. There's the 2 on the top of the wings, 1 on the side, and of course the front grille. The headlights can go in next, and the lenses have some rather well attached white LEDs. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get to wire up the lights in this video, as my RC time is a little tight this week, but I think we will end up trying to use them when we do. So to make them a little easier to handle, I'll quickly heat up the solder joints and remove the wires. Now it's just a simple case of popping the lens in the front of the body. They're shaped so they'll only fit on the correct side. Then one of the surrounds clips in over the top. Again, the surrounds are shaped so you can't get them the wrong way round. Very nice. The rear light clusters press back into place. We'll end up fitting at the very least the red tail lights and the reversing lights, maybe in the next video. If not, it will be the one after. The side doors need the mirrors refitting. Now they're rubber with barbs on the end, so they can be a bit of a struggle to get in. But if you press and wiggle, they do gradually find their way in. Next the rubber latch drops in. It's got a round nub on one side, so it will only fit in the right way. The hinge at the front gets 2 of the short black screws. These ones weren't stripped, but I'd think they wouldn't be too hard to overdo, so we need to be extra careful not to over tighten them. Same goes with the 4 screws that attach the door card. Do the same with the other side door and they're ready to fit. The back door is a bit different. We need to refit the spare wheel for the door latch. To remove the pin, I ended up heating it up so I could pull it through. But that had the unfortunate side effect of melting the flange on the black plastic part. Now because it's melted, the edges are a bit rough, so the head of the pin doesn't easily pass through. That makes a good candidate for some 5-minute epoxy. It'll grip the rough edges very nicely, and since it's not going to see all that much abuse, it should be more than up to the task. All we do then is mix some epoxy up. We don't need much, but it's always a good idea to mix up a bit more than you really need. With 5-minute especially, you really don't want to run out partway through. We'll put a little bit in the hole in the wheel, literally just a spear inside. The pin is still a press fit, so there's not all that much space to fill. Next we can pop the black part into the door from the inside, then press the wheel in from the outside. The wheel has 3 oddly spaced webs that lock into the black part, so you can't really get it wrong. Next we can pop the pin in, just far enough that it grips and stands up by itself. Then around the bottom of the head we can run a bead of epoxy. The idea being when the pin's pressed in, it's going to form a flange under the head, tying it all together. For now we'll need to be a bit gentle with it, just until the epoxy's set. The parts are all fairly tight press fits, but it would still be fairly easy to knock it and get something misaligned. Once it's been sat for a few minutes, we can pop in the latch slider. It's got a pin that slots into the black plastic bit that's now attached to the wheel. It's just balanced in there for now, so when we put the spring in we're going to need to be very careful as it's really going to want to fly apart. The spring is going to be very easy to lose. For now we'll just pop the door card back on and fit a single screw. We'll need to take the card off again when we fit the door, so fitting the card will just keep it safe for the time being. The window can go back in next. It's got 2 tabs at the bottom and 2 clips at the top. It goes back in very easily, and it really does look the part from the outside, which just leaves the tyre. It just stretches over the wheel. It's a bit awkward, but with a bit of work it does sit nice and straight. Next, we need to wrestle the interior back into the body. There's one thing for sure, it came out a lot easier than it goes back in. I found you really need to pull the sills out a bit more than really feels comfortable to get it to slide in. I get the impression that the white lugs on the body might have been glued in after the interior was fitted at the factory. Either way, with a bit of care and a bit of light brute force, it does pop back in. And of course, when it is back in position, it does fit pretty much perfectly. Looking around the body, it's all lined up rather nicely. The side doors can go back on now. They fit from the outside with the hinge part going through a slot in the side of the interior. With the door shut, the holes in the hinge should line up with the hole in the front of the interior, and we can pop one of the hinge pins through. It might need a bit of a jiggle to get it all to line up just so, but it won't be far off. Press the pin in all the way, and we can fit one of the large plastic bits that keep the pin in, and they will also act as one of the body mounting points. While we're at the front, we also need to fit 2 of the very short silver self-tappers to attach the front of the interior to the body. Now it's very important that you get the right screws here. The longer ones will punch through to the outside of the body, which really wouldn't be good. With both the doors fitted and the large plastic bits screwed in, we can move to the back end. The first bit to go back in is the fuel filler. It simply drops in, and we use one of the washerhead self-tappers to attach it to the interior. The fuel filler ever so slightly sticks out into the body, so we couldn't have left it on. We probably wouldn't have been able to remove the interior without damaging something. Next, the holes right in the middle of the rear arches need 2 more of the very short self-tapping screws. Once they're in, the whole body assembly really starts to feel very solid again. To the outside now, and we can fit the back door. We need to remove the door card again, being very careful not to let the latch slider and spring pop out. Then we can slot the hinge into the door, then the door card goes back on with its 4 black screws, and the body is complete. Back in the first video, you may remember I had a bit of difficulty getting the back door to close properly. Well, not too surprisingly, the problem is still there. However, with the body off the chassis, it's fairly easy to see what the problem is. The interior part that covers up the rear lights ever so slightly leans into the door aperture, which stops the door from closing all the way, thus not letting it latch. From the underside, we can press the post that mounts the interior panel to the floor to straighten it up. Then the door closes perfectly. It's a little bit annoying, but when we get to fitting the lights, we will be able to do a permanent fix, probably involving some glue or plastic-weld to keep it in position. Now for the moment of truth, will the body fit on the chassis and clear the ESC and the wiring? The ESC should sit in the tunnel in the interior, and with any luck the wiring will fit in the gap. Well, it looks like we got away with it. The body is sitting nicely and it's located nicely on the posts. All that's left to do now is fit the 8 screws with the larger heads. Now we probably don't need to install all of them. The 4 middle ones at the front and the rear of the sills would probably be more than enough to hold it together. It'll be designed for kids to try and destroy, and we're really not going to need that level of strength. With those screws in and a camera angle change, we've got what should be a working 1/14 scale Land Rover. And despite the minor mix-up with the paint, I think it does look pretty good. I think any paint always ends up looking a bit better than plain plastic anyway, and a white roof adds a bit of contrast. I think it came out rather well. I suppose before we really do call it done for today, we should power it up and give it a quick test. We'll just pop in one of the little 2S 800 mAh packs and turn it on. And well, that's about it for this week then. We've still got the lights to work on, of course. Now the headlights are already glued in, and we're going to need some side lights. To make it easier, I think we're going to use some surface mount LEDs. Now these ones are 0805, which are rather small. I'll probably end up going for 1206s, which are a bit bigger and easier to manage when soldering to wires rather than directly to a PCB. Using the little LEDs will especially make the tail lights easier to deal with. We should be able to fit the LED more or less entirely inside the lens, so we're not going to have to modify the interior at all. We still need to work out something for the suspension too. Even with all the weight of the body, the rear end still needs a lot of force to move. Now I was thinking perhaps some of this silicone fuel tube might do the trick. When you compress it, it starts off very soft initially and gets stiff very quickly. It should be possible to fit it to the rear, making it a bit more pliable. It won't work at the front though, as the springs go over the posts that the hubs turn on. Maybe we'll try it when we sort the lights out. Literally any suspension movement would be better than what we have at the moment. Right, so that really is it for this week. So as always, thanks for watching. Like if you liked, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a message if you got something to say. Oh, and I've started using the YouTube app on my phone, so with any luck I'll be replying when the messages are still vaguely relevant. Bye guys!